Title: Hollow Skies and Shotgun Shells. Chapter 1. The First Sighting. The day the world ended started like any other for Wyatt Granger, a 25-year-old ranch hand with a knack for fixing broken things and a love for the stillness of wide-open spaces. He rose with the sun, pulling on worn jeans and boots caked in mud, the familiar scent of hay and leather filling the air as he walked into the barn. The cattle's low grunts were his morning soundtrack, their big brown eyes watching him as he hauled feed from the storage shed. It was shaping up to be another quiet day on the ranch, far removed from the chaos of the city. Wyatt had no use for big crowds or the endless hum of technology. Out here, life was simple, predictable, safe, or so he thought. The first scream shattered the silence just after noon. Wyatt was out by the fence line, repairing a section that had come loose in last night's storm, when the sound tore through the still air. It was distant but unmistakable, raw and guttural, filled with a terror that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. He froze, hammer in hand, scanning the horizon for the source. "What the hell?" he muttered. Grabbing the pair of binoculars he kept slung over the post, he raised them to his eyes and focused on the direction of the scream. His heart dropped. Near the neighboring ranch, a figure was stumbling through the field, moving with an unnatural gait. It wasn't just their jerky, uncoordinated movements that set off alarm bells in Wyatt's mind. It was the way their skin seemed to glow faintly under the midday sun, veins pulsing with an eerie green light. "What in God's name?" Wyatt whispered, his stomach churning. Before he could process what he was seeing, the figure lunged at a cow grazing nearby. The animal let out a panicked bellow as the man, tackled it to the ground and tore into its flesh with horrifying speed. Blood sprayed across the field, and Wyatt dropped the binoculars, his breath catching in his throat. Jesus Christ! He didn't think. He didn't stop to grab supplies or even close the gate. He just ran, legs pumping as fast as they could carry him back to the ranch house. The sight of that creature, that thing, burned in his mind, and for the first time in his life, Wyatt felt truly helpless. Chapter 2. The Shotgun. Wyatt burst through the front door of the ranch house, his boots skidding on the hardwood floor. The place was eerily quiet, save for the faint hum of the old refrigerator in the kitchen. His father's words echoed in his mind. "Always be ready, son. The world's full of surprises, most of 'em bad." He needed a weapon. The sawed-off shotgun was exactly where his dad had left it years ago, hidden under a pile of old coats in the closet by the kitchen. Wyatt had seen it once as a kid, but his father had made it clear it was for emergencies only. Well, this sure as hell qualified. He grabbed the gun and the half-empty box of shells next to it, his hands trembling as he loaded the weapon. The scream came again, closer this time. Wyatt's head snapped up, his heart hammering in his chest. He peeked out the window and saw the creature stumbling up the dirt path toward the house. It moved faster than before, as if the act of feeding had given it new strength. Its glowing green veins pulsed with every step, and its eyes, lifeless black pits, locked onto Wyatt. "Not today, you bastard," Wyatt muttered, gripping the shotgun tighter. He threw open the door and stepped onto the porch, raising the weapon to his shoulder. The creature let out a guttural snarl and charged. Wyatt fired. The first shot hit it square in the chest, green blood spraying across the dirt. But it didn't stop. Wyatt cursed, cocking the gun and firing again. This time, the creature's head snapped back, and it crumpled to the ground in a heap. Wyatt stood there for a moment, chest heaving, the acrid smell of gunpowder filling the air. He'd hunted deer and wild hogs before, but this was different. This was something else entirely. And deep down, he knew it wasn't over.
Chapter 3, A New Reality. That night the world went dark. The television flickered once, twice, and then cut to static. Wyatt flipped through the channels, hoping for answers, but all he got was a robotic voice on an emergency broadcast loop. This is a global emergency. An unknown pathogen has infected the population. Stay indoors. Avoid the infected. The pathogen is believed to be extraterrestrial in origin. Wyatt sat back in his chair, shotgun resting across his lap. He tried to wrap his head around it, but it didn't make any damn sense. Aliens? Glowing zombies? He shook his head and turned his focus to survival. Whatever was happening, he wasn't going down without a fight. Over the next few days, Wyatt fortified the ranch. He boarded up the windows, reinforced the doors, and set up makeshift traps around the perimeter. He knew the infected, as the broadcast called them, would come back, and he wanted to be ready. But there was one problem: ammo. The box of shells he'd found was almost empty, and the nearest gun store was over 20 miles away. Wyatt needed a solution, and fast. Chapter 4. Building a Weapon. Wyatt found his answer in the barn, buried under years of dust and hay. His father's old reloading press. It was a bulky, rusted thing, but it still worked. With a bit of trial and error, Wyatt figured out how to make his own shells. He scavenged brass casings from abandoned vehicles, scraped together gunpowder from fireworks and hunting rounds, and even melted down old fishing weights to cast his own slugs. It wasn't perfect. The first few shells misfired, and one almost blew up in his face, but Wyatt was nothing if not stubborn. He kept at it, refining his process until the shells worked as well as the store-bought ones. Each round he loaded felt like a small victory, a reminder that he wasn't helpless. As the days turned to weeks, Wyatt's skills grew. He fashioned a holster for his shotgun, rigged tripwires around the ranch, and even built a small forge in the barn to repair tools and make new parts. The ranch became a fortress, a beacon of hope in a world gone mad. And then one day, Wyatt's isolation ended. Chapter 5. The Little Girl. The first survivor Wyatt encountered wasn't what he expected. It wasn't some hardened soldier or a desperate scavenger. It was a little girl. He spotted her at the edge of his property near the north fence line, where the land gave way to a shallow creek. She was maybe 8 years old, her tiny frame wrapped in a torn pink hoodie, the hood pulled up over her dark, tangled hair. She was sitting on a rock, her legs drawn up to her chest, staring at the water. Wyatt approached cautiously, shotgun at the ready. He'd seen what the infection could do, and he wasn't about to take any chances. "Hey," he called out, his voice low and steady. "You all right, kid?" The girl flinched at the sound of his voice, her head snapping up. Her eyes, big, brown, and terrified, met his, and Wyatt felt his heart twist. She wasn't infected. She was just a kid, lost and alone in a world gone to hell. "It's okay," Wyatt said, lowering the shotgun. "I'm not gonna hurt you." The girl didn't respond. She just stared at him, her small hands clutching a stuffed rabbit that looked like it had been dragged through the mud. Wyatt took a step closer, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. "My name's Wyatt," he said. "I got a safe place, not far from here. You hungry?" At the mention of food, the girl's eyes lit up with a flicker of hope. She nodded, her grip on the stuffed rabbit tightening. Wyatt held out his hand. and after a long moment, she took it. Her hand was so small in his, so fragile, and Wyatt felt a surge of protectiveness he hadn't felt in years. "All right, kid," he said. "Let's get you home." To be continued. Written by Joshua Henry.